Dear government, next time I hear about levelling up, that is how you level up. Welcome back to Tools and Track. For Christ knows how many episodes now, I've been trying to get this project moving. Well, today it's time to make it move less. That was a brakes joke. Sorry. Yeah, it's been a while coming, but it's time for us to finally start talking about brakes. Why have I left it to this point? Well, because I'm actually at a stage now where I want to be making a rolling chassis for the last time. So if we're moving on to brakes, it's going to be the final setup. So I went and bought a lot of new things. And again, we've discussed this in a previous episode. Why buy new things when we had an MX-5 as a breaker? Well, because it's brakes and I don't want to die. So yes, we could overhaul the old ones, but well, I didn't. So, what have I bought? Well, I'm going to start with the first and the most obvious thing when we talk about brakes. That's brake calipers. Now yes, we have brake calipers and they could be overhauled and made to work. How can I put this? I want to expedite this process because we are stalling at this point. So, rather than overhauling, I did the following and just bought brand new calipers. These come with literally everything bar brake pads and bolt straight onto the hubs that we've got. You'll see they're a natty colour of silver and they'll probably do. But why go to all that expense? Because this, including the carrier, is half the price of an overhaul. That is what we call a no-brainer. Two front calipers with carriers ready to go on the hubs, as you can see. But wait, there's more. What else do you need when you buy calipers? Brake pads, and for those to act on, brake discs. So that's the fronts sorted, more or less. But front brakes also require some way of acting on them. For that we have bought Brady brake lines. New handbrake cables, because the ones in the back are made out of rust. So they'll go in and we'll actually have an operating handbrake. But what is the handbrake going to operate on? I hear you ask. That would be rear discs and pads. And how do we get the brake fluid to the rear discs and pads with the fancy new Brady brake lines? Using 25 foot of Cupro nickel brake line, secured to the car with IV8 compliant P-clips, with all the lines made up with a brand new brake flaring tool, because somebody broke my old one. Now, I hear you ask, what about the rear calipers? Well, that kind of did smash the budget. So all of this so far has cost about 300 quid. Now that's not a lot of money. We consider this is literally everything from scratch for a brake system, but it's still quite a bit. So we'll get a good chunk of this done in this episode, and then we'll probably finish off brakes, including fitting the pedal box and making sure it all works in the next one. But don't worry, it's not like I'm going to be struggling for things to do, because in amongst all the things that I've ordered includes this outstanding last sheet of aluminium that was going to go under my arse that I didn't measure correctly, all of the associated countersunk rivets that I ran out with doing the chassis the last time, including enough to do that, and a few other bits and bobs. But anyway, that's enough to get going with. But before I do, the first thing I need to do is make sure everything that I'm going to be putting on this car is going to be done correctly. And sadly that means a double period in the lecture theatre. Now remember, it's easy to chuck on brakes and hope for the best, but what we're doing in the car will actually have to be compliant with the IVA manual. Remember that bad boy? So let's just have a quick cross check on the PC, make sure that we're going to be within the regulations. Exciting. So we've got a number of things here to consider with brakes, being the safety critical thing that it is. It's got more than one section in the IVA manual. So the first thing we're going to have to look at is 9. Brake systems. We'll also look at service brake control, mechanical components, and a few of the other things, hydraulic and vacuum systems, brake performance. We won't need to deal with brake performance. That's way off down the line. So the required standards. So what we must have for brakes: a service braking system that is completely independent of the control of the parking brake. That's fine. Capable of functioning in all wheels. That's fine. Single wheels of operation. Brake pedal. Will gradually increase or reduce the braking force through the action of the control, hydraulically actuated. So that's fine, we're hitting number 1. The service braking system must be capable of being operated from the driving seat, yep, whilst keeping both hands on the steering wheel, yep. This does not apply to the controls used for disabled, we're not disabled, it's fine. And 4, the vehicle must be fitted with a split dual circuit braking system, with each part of the system operating on at least 2 wheels, one on each side, capable of operating in the event of a failure of the service brake or its power assistance. So if we lose 50% of our brakes, 50% must work. That all comes down to the master cylinder. We should be okay there. So yeah, it's going to be front and back. One wheel on each side means the 2 front wheels will operate if the back fails, and the 2 back wheels will operate if the front fails. So we're on the right track there as well. Parking brake system must be capable of operating from the driving seat whilst keeping one hand on the steering wheel. Fine. Parking brake system must be capable of being operated and released whether the vehicle is stationary or moving. It can. Parking brake system must be capable of being operated on all wheels of at least one axle, which it is. And the parking brake system must be capable of being operated in control independent service brake, which it is by cables. 15 is an interesting one. With the brake control fully applied, there must be sufficient reserve travel, so it can't just hit the floor and work. It's got to be, about the halfway mark. Brake control must not creep down while it's held under pressure, i.e. a passing seal. All of this stuff's pretty much as per the MOT standard, if I'm being honest. I'm skimming through here trying to find something that's going to be quite surprising. So here's an interesting one. So we will have to label the master cylinder with this guy here, just so that it's compliant with what they expect to see labelled. That's fine. And an indelible label must be affixed in a visible position within 100mm of the filling ports of the fluid reservoirs to ensure that it is possible for the end user of the vehicle to identify the brake fluid used in the system. That's a good one. I'll need to find the .4 sticker somewhere. This covers ABS, which we don't need to worry about, and that's us down to the notes. So, got to be dual circuit, got to be sensible, and then once we're done, we'll see if it reaches this criteria. Because realistically, if I can't make it hit this criteria, I shouldn't be working on brakes in the first place. Right, so we know the criteria the brakes have to meet in order to hit an IVA. The next thing we need to do is actually start it. So in true Tools and Track fashion, I'm going to do none of that. I'm going to flip the car upside down and do something completely different. Right, that's a whole load of to-do list stuff ticked off the to-do list. Now we can probably start focusing on brakes. Now I'm going to start with the simple job first, which is setting up the fronts, mainly because the runs are pretty short and it's a pretty basic setup. But in order to make sure I get the lines right, I'm going to put the suspension on. Again, another dry run, we don't want to fully torque it up, just so I can get the hubs on, work out where the actual brake caliper is going to sit. So that's my first job. So that's the fronts on, and already I think we're going to have some problems. So I've put the master cylinder in because we'll need that to sort of size up where the lines are going to run. Here is where we're going to demonstrate that these are not going to be long enough. Now you might think, well, that's almost close if you want to never steer the car, but we will need to steer the car. So if I do that, it's, yeah. And bear in mind that at some point in the middle of all this, that I'll actually have to secure it to the leg so that it doesn't just flap around and do nonsense. It was a calculated risk, but as we know, I'm not great at math. So that's the fronts. We're going to have some issues. What I can do though is, now that we have these, they can allow me to measure up. So we do know what the fittings are going to look like in the end. I will get custom ones as close to an MX-5 as possible, just with extra length on it. And we know what this is going to be like. So we can make sure that the calipers I've bought are definitely the right ones for this, and we can work out a route and how much extra we need off of a standard one. So it's not a total loss, but I've also discovered something on the master cylinder. So despite its ABS based leanings, this is a 2-port master cylinder. So I've got one port here and one port here, and between the two, obviously that'll be split off so it can be dual circuit. So that's good. This will work. We'll just do the front half of that master cylinder feeding the front brakes, the rear half feeding the rear brakes, and we'll be Gucci. However, my lines will have to run from here down onto somewhere to be anchored. Now that's all fine and well until we need to take the pedal box out, because it means we will be continually bending any line that sticks up towards that master cylinder, which isn't going to be good either. So I think what we'll need to do is finalise and then final mount the pedal box, because whilst it can be removed, it's not going to be something that's going to happen frequently because there'll be brake lines intruding on it now. So yeah, that needs to end. But what we can do for now is sort the front lines onto where they're going to mount, probably down to here, and then there'll be like a T-piece that will go from here to this brake line, and then across here, over there to that brake line. And then we can also grind off the fresh paint we put in the chassis to weld on mounts that will hold the chassis mounting points for the flexi lines. I really did think this through, didn't I? This is why I brushed on paint. I knew we'd have to be modifying things even after it's got paint on it, but I'm not too worried about it. It's just black paint. It's not going to be the end of the world. So what I'm going to start doing is making bets. Really, am I making bets? Is that wise, or should I just go and get the flexis so I know exactly what I'm working with? Let's just go and get the flexis. Right, this is in. We know what we're doing with it. Let's start in the rears. Ever the resolute problem solver, I think we have a solution to the front brake lines. It looks like this. So what you're looking at here is how these are going to start their run using the old brake line. Now, if you look here, that clamp's going to form some sort of bracket at some point. But if we turn the wheel, the line has plenty of slack, so it can do all of its movie stuff. And then from there, we just need additional length to go to here. Now, before you ask, I did consider having some sort of intermediate bracket that would go from this flexi to a hard line, and then another flexi to go from the wishbone onto the bodywork. But that's going to be a pain in the arse, so I'm not going to. Instead, what we're going to do is just buy a whole new line, because there's absolutely no benefit from having this wee bit hard lined and then another small flexi, because that small flexi is probably going to cost about as much as this whole flexi will to replace. And it means that if I ever need to replace one again, I just need an MX5 with an additional amount of X length, as opposed to one standard MX5 plus whatever like bodgery I make up to go from the wishbone to the car. So that's what we're going to do. And the additional length that I need is around about 27 centimetres. So yeah, this is crude. Obviously we are still waiting to debate what's going to happen with the rears. Well, obviously I'm going to order them. But I've just fired on the old stuff at the moment because I'm at risk of having literally nothing left to do here. But we've kind of want to watch with this, because if I line up the new flexis that we've got, distance between the caliper on the rear and anywhere that I can mate it on is actually quite low. So flexi line coming off the caliper like that, if we put it to there and make a bracket that holds that, you'll see that's actually quite, lots of slack, plenty of free play, and from there we can put on our hard lines back to wherever. Now, I will say this, the temptation to run it straight through this bar has been completely diminished because of that. But while we're here, we should probably put some thought into where we're going to run these. Now, that takes me nicely onto brake lines. The IVA manual doesn't have a lot of strict criteria, but I'm pretty sure the IVA test will. We're not just running a line and cable tying this, it's going to have to be done correctly. Now, we alluded earlier on that I have bought P-clips. All they do is, you run the line through the middle of that, and as you bolt it down, it crimps down and holds the line. Great, that is a nice home build solution to securing a brake line. The problem I've got is, what are we bolting this to? There isn't any pre-drilled, pre-welded fancy wee holes for this. Now, that's okay, we can think about riv nuts, and we can probably do riv nuts because it doesn't bear a lot of weight. But the problem I've got here is the transmission tunnel, because I am not going to get a rivet tool into anything that's hidden inside there. Similarly, I don't particularly want to run the brake lines through the inside of the car. I think the transmission tunnels is going to be the best place for it. So we need to put a bit of thought into this, which I have. So what we're going to have is our previously discussed hard mount for the flexi lines is going to live there. We are going to run the brake lines along and to roughly about here, I would say, and then we're going to have our T-piece that splits the two off, and then we have one line running under here. Now we're okay with this because bear in mind the pinion doesn't come to the corner, so we can run a line through there, and similarly probably run the fuel line through here, but we'll come to that later. Once through here, and bearing in mind that we're going along the top, I could run the P-clips a bit like that into the side of there and hanging down, and that gives me a nice route along here, access with a 90-degree drill to drill the holes for it, and if I need to do it every 300mm, I can get 1, 2, 3, and then underneath here until it pops out around about here, and then all we need to do is go down, around, and into the master cylinder. How's that for a slice of f***ing genius? So that's, I think, going to be our plan. We can carry on, we can get the rears done. The only problem is I don't have the calipers to do the rears, and I don't have the flexes to do the front. So we're going back to eBay. Okay, so these are pretty much done for the back. They'll just go on each side with the brake lines going in, get the wee clamps to hold them on, and then we'll do the hard lines from there. That's fine, we'll weld them on and it won't give us any problems. However, despite knowing exactly where they need to go in the back, I am almost spoiled for choice in where they can go in the front. As you can see, there is mountains of room, but I am absolutely petrified of picking somewhere and it not being correct. So as you can see, I am proposing that they go here as per our earlier discussion, so that the lines can just come out, follow the line of that arm, up and in. However, thinking fourth dimensionally, that might give me some problems because it'll make getting that bolt out an absolute nightmare. Actually, I would probably say completely impossible. Not out with the realms of possibility though, because we could just flip that around, put the nut on that end and the bolt through that end. It just means that we need to be aware of that if we're ever messing around with it. Similarly, I'll need to make sure that these are angled probably more like that, so that the line that comes out of there doesn't tickle this bolt when it goes onto here, which it shouldn't. In fairness, it's probably going to have plenty of space. I just want to make sure it's going to be right. So that might work. In fairness, we might just move them a bit more forward to like here, but then that would definitely work. But the problem I'm going to have is I'm also petrified it's going to start fouling with something else. So short of just putting the engine in and all the steering gubbins to make sure this is right, there's not really much other way to do it. Except there is. I'm going to go home and watch all the videos I've made about this and figure out where things lie, and that's going to dictate where these will land. Also, on the subject of petrified as to where to put something, this will have a line coming out, running along here, and then it splits and goes into two. This is the bit that splits it, that came with the brake lines. And I've got another one of these for a Land Rover, which is a bit more compact, that I bought for the rears. And I'm absolutely horrified as to where I can put it. Because if I put it here and the engine fouls it, see earlier conversation. So, do we risk it for a biscuit? Place bets now. Well, I had such grand schemes of this being an epic brake episode, but in typical Tools and Track fashion, none of this has went the way I was supposed to do it. So let's start from the front and work our way back. So brake lines, absolutely toast. They're not going to work. I've ordered custom ones with about an extra 66 centimetres or so on it. So they'll more or less reach. Once they arrive, I'll get these brackets put on and that'll kind of tie the front up. Then we just need to run the hard lines up to the master cylinder. The master cylinder isn't a big drama, but what I have realised is we're probably going to have to paint that and put it in properly for good. So that we'll have to order more paint for, because I'm out of chassis paint. Moving further back, as we've just alluded to, the handbrake is just no. So what's actually happened here is I have measured up this entire handbrake setup based on the old lines. The old lines clearly have stretched to a disgusting amount because the new lines won't fit. They're far too small. Well, they're not too small, I mean they're the right size, they're what they're supposed to be. But I've based all of this to be nice and tight on the old ones. Not gonna lie, it probably would have been smart for me to wind the adjuster in fully, but why would I do that? Surely you want to be taking slack out and not putting slack in. Anyway, the long and the short is, even with that side done, you can see the difference there. That's tight, really tight. This side's slack, it's just going to get tighter once I put this second caliper on. Oh wait, and we're not done with that either, because that caliper I have now ordered, but what I've discovered after putting on the caliper that I've ordered for the other side with a quick shot blasting session of the old carrier is the discs are too small that I've ordered. So clearly there are two sizes of discs for the back of the MX-5 and I need whatever the bigger ones are. Similarly, the anti-rattle shim's completely absent and they won't fit that caliper. Then, last of all, look at the clearance I don't have for this handbrake cable once it's in place. This has gone well. I've got a lot of thinking to do, we're gonna have to come up with a lot of plans, but like, looking in the positive, I was gonna have these problems anyway. This is the whole part of building a car from scratch without really plans for a specific MX-5, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna have to find solutions that are not in the book. So, what I'm gonna do is wait for all the other bits that I've ordered to arrive, and we're going to come back to this and at least finish something. What's going to happen next, now that I know this is the case, is we're going to get this other caliper here, work out where the rest of the handbrake assembly needs to go, work out where my hard lines are going to go, template on the brackets, i.e. draw around them where they're going to live. I'm probably going to have to put a wee bit of thought into this as well. I think that's going to need a bracket. Strip all of the car down, put it upside down, because once it's upside down, we can then look at how we're going to run this line from the front to the back. And probably put some consideration into the fuel line while we're at it, so I don't ever have to think about this again. Stop me if this is starting to become quite a list. That's what's on the menu for the next time. Thank you for all these Patreons who are putting up with the complete and utter incompetence in my plans. I promise this will get better once we solve all these niggles. To anyone who's just found this, patreon.com/toolsandtrack and help me fund these f***ups, frankly. If that's not for you, cool, just do the like, subscribe, bell nonsense at the bottom, because there we go. Until next week, guys, I'm going to go do some research. Try safe. I'm going to do none of that. Flip the car upside. I'm going to do none of that. So in truth, you f***ing done. Wait a minute. It's f***ing upside down.